It was terrible. She couldn't even jog because that would exacerbate and start the symptoms going. Welcome to Mother-Daughter Connections, the show dedicated to educating, encouraging, and equipping moms to build lasting, meaningful connections with their daughters. I'm your host and mother-daughter relationship personal trainer, Dr. Michelle Deering. My heart is to be of help to you. I believe that your relationship with your mom is the foundation for your future success, personally, parentally, and professionally. Now remember, even though I'm a licensed psychologist, I'm not your shrink on this show. I am, however, here to share my opinions and those of my guests. If you have concerns about your mental health, please seek services from a mental health provider in your local area. Now join me as we pause to consider today's topic. Well, hi there and welcome. I am so excited that you're here with me today. And in particular, if you've been listening for the last several episodes, I'm excited that it is an Olympic year this year. I get really pumped just to see athletes from around the world showcase their talents and compete and bond around the field of sports. It's a beautiful thing to see, and I wish they weren't every 4 years. I wish they were more often, but I'll take what I can get. And for the last several weeks, I've been talking with you about lessons learned from elite athletes. Well, today, I'd like to speak with you about Simone. No, not Simone Biles. That's gymnastics. We already talked about gymnastics in Frederick last time. Today, I want to talk about another Simone that you need to know about, and her name is Simone Manuel. Simone Manuel graduated from Stanford University, had many accomplishments as an NCAA swimmer at that university. She tried out for the Olympic team back in 2016, and she ended up making the team, in particular in her discipline of the 100-meter freestyle. She got to Rio in 2016 and ended up winning the gold medal in the 100-meter freestyle, becoming the first African-American woman to win an individual medal in swimming ever. The accolades came forth as a result of that. And then 2020 comes around and she tries out for the Olympic team at the Olympic trials to defend her 100-meter freestyle accolade. And she placed 9th and didn't qualify to even go to the Olympics in that discipline to defend her title. And she attributed that to something called overtraining syndrome. Now, there's a certain amount of stress and overloading that elite athletes undergo as they train in their particular sport discipline. But there's a balance that they need to find between training and getting adequate recovery time. And the lines get blurred when your identity becomes what you do. That's a problem. And for Simone, the toll of the long hours, the isolation, the expectations, the performance expectations, and her goals all began to pile up on her in a manner where all she saw herself as was as a swimmer. And if she wasn't performing well, then her sense of her personhood would just take a nosedive, no pun intended. And then with the freestyle 100-meter event being taken away from her, she was just left with herself and a diagnosis of overtraining syndrome. I've heard her talk about this and read about, overtraining syndrome. She was basically left with not being able to do any kind of exercise, let alone physical activity. Like she couldn't even jog because that would exacerbate and start the symptoms going. It was terrible for her during that period of time. So she could not, as an athlete, imagine you're an athlete and could not do anything athletic. She was just left with herself. And so she took herself to therapy and had to face herself in figuring out, defining and redefining who she is as a person. And as she did that, she was eventually able to get her way back to the pool. But this time, she was doing it with a different mindset, a different heart set. She was freer, more balanced in her mind and in her body, and she was swimming not for others, but for herself, within herself. And the result is at the 2024 Olympic trials, she gets on the blocks to do the 50 meter. Not even her own discipline from the past. She's doing the 50 meter, which is a shorter race. Gun goes off. She gets in the pool. There's not much room for error. She's about in third or fourth place. As they get to the 25 meter mark, she's barely in third place. And the next thing you know, boom, she touches the wall first with a time of 24.13 seconds. I was watching this and was like floored. I'm, standing up, cheering. I see Michael Phelps and Roddy Gaines and the other sportscaster like totally fist pumping in the air, etc. That was amazing. When you look at the camera on her, she looks totally surprised, but she had a different sense of peace around her. Like she was surprised, but she wasn't surprised. And when they interviewed her afterwards, she said that she really wanted to channel that Simone because she knows that she's a winner. And I can only imagine, not that I'm her sports psychologist or anything like that, but I can only imagine how often she had to, over and over again, tell herself that until she got to a point where she realized that she really is a winner. But in order to do that, she had to get out of the pool so she could experience the peace, so that when she went back into the pool, she could swim with the peace. Now, getting out of the pool of peer pressure, pool of personal pressure, expectations, inside, outside, that whole getting out of the pool thing is a process. And my question to you as a mom is, what would you give to have that kind of peace within yourself as a mom and in your mother-daughter relationship? Would you be willing to take a hard look inward at yourself? You don't have to do it alone. Therapy does help. And if you're wanting to get help from a trained professional who's an expert in all things mother-daughter relationships, please schedule a no-guilt consult call with me by going to the URL bit.ly/no-guilt-consult. That's bit.ly/no-guilt-consult. So the lesson that you can learn from an elite athlete like Simone Manuel is to get help with facing yourself. That's where it starts. Be encouraged. Healthy mother-daughter relationships are possible. They just take one curative connection at a time. It starts with yourself and then will spread to your daughter. I'll see you next week. You've been listening to Mother-Daughter Connections with me, your host and mother-daughter relationship personal trainer, Dr. Michelle Deering. Thanks so much for joining me today. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Share this episode with a friend so they don't miss an episode. And download the resource in the show notes. Until next time, remember to pause to consider how you can connect intentionally so you can improve relationally with your daughter.